All right. I'm with CEO of First Atlantic Nickel. His name is Adrian Smith. The symbol is FAN, F-A-N, on the TSX Venture. Adrian, good afternoon. How are you?
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
It's been a little bit since we've spoken, Adrian, but First Atlantic has been busy in 2025, and that really shows up here in the last couple months with all the news you guys have been publishing. Both in terms of the drill program, but also you made news just yesterday with a new project acquisition there in Newfoundland. So let's talk about the drill program at Pipestone. Tell us the latest.
So yeah, we've been very busy. We've had a lot of drilling throughout the year. The drilling has all had positive results. We still have 4 pending drill holes, so that the drilling is on a break, and we're waiting to receive our final results. But the footprint in the area that we've drilled is now expanded to 1.4 kilometers drill to drill. So even if you're putting a buffer around that to put into a resource, you're going to get 1.5, 1.6 kilometers kind of drilled strike length out of that, and 800 meters wide. Not to mention, we're going down 400 or 500 meters in depth. So this is turning into a beast. It's just a massive amount of volume that we're looking at, and all the drilling that we've had to date warrants further drilling. So right now we're focused on getting additional funding in, which we just accomplished, and this is going to allow us to continue drilling throughout the winter. We're going to prioritize expansion and testing new targets. We believe there's a secondary zone just north of the RPM zone called the Pipestone zone, and this is another potential large-scale mineralized area where you could have conceptualized 2 kind of large-scale operations going at the same time. And it's kind of, how big do you need this to be? Well, if we get this second zone, the first zone's already big enough. The second zone is kind of, it makes it what I would consider a world-class size and scale of a project.
Yeah, it's impressive how large the scale is here, and also the grades appear to be improving with time. It seems like you're honing into some slightly higher grade areas, like hole AN 2510 is the best that you've reported to date, with 228 meters of 0.15% in the DTR grade, recoverable through magnetic separation processes. Tell us about that and what is working in terms of being able to vector into these higher grade areas.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know exactly what the variation is going to be, because we're not necessarily targeting a high grade pocket. What we're doing is we're drilling on very large step outs to define the full scale of this. So, when we start doing a program and you're just regularly taking a grid pattern approach, it's you're generally moving that grid towards where the grades are better, but you're not trying to misrepresent what's there. It's just the kind of way that I look at it is, how is it possible if you go into an area over a large region and you drill your first hole as the best hole? I mean, you would be the luckiest person alive, right? So the fact that we're seeing this variation and we're seeing some of the grades in some of these areas be not significantly better, but be good, so that we're potentially going to be getting a starter pit type of material. We kind of expect that, and in these areas that we come across by doing this gradual step out grid drilling, where we see these areas are better, those are the areas that are going to end up being focused on to build a starter pit or your initial resource. And those areas could be hundreds of millions of tons within an area of billions of tons. So it's important that we recognize those areas, but we're not focusing that this is going to be the best hole. It's really about, making sure you're covering the most amount of ground to get that scale and to get that size. And when you do find these pockets, that's where you're going to focus on to start your operation. So it's really encouraging that we're seeing these kind of grades. And yeah, it's it's really what we were hoping to see. And so we're very pleased and we're excited to continue drilling.
So right now, the drill program is on a break, but there's 4 holes pending assays, and then I imagine the drill rig will be back in January.
That's our current plan. Yeah, we want to take advantage of the colder weather for the ground conditions. In the fall and the spring, the ground can get fairly muddy, but in the winter time, it's actually quite easy to operate in the region when the ground is frozen. So we're going to take advantage of some capital and some of our recent success, and we're going to continue operating at the Pipestone XL and try to see how large we can expand this area.
Getting a little bit technical here, just curious, the grade variation between, let's say, holes 9 and 10, like you said, you're drilling in a very wide area. Some holes are going to be lower grade, some holes are going to be higher grade, and then you're going to eventually focus maybe on tightening up the spacing in the higher grade areas for a potential, starter pit sort of setup there. But like, for example, hole 10 had 0.17% DTR high up in the hole near surface. What explains why the awaruite is stronger in that area up closer to surface?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer. It's asking Mother Nature to give up her secrets. But in general, what the pattern of these type of deposits is, you get widespread mineralization due to regional scale alteration, and within those zones, which are controlled by temperatures and pressures, when the body of rock was actually much deeper and it had fluids running through it. So there is still a variation due to the variations of temperatures and pressures when it was being altered. The increased fluid flow, we believe, through more heavily faulted areas has an improvement factor to the amount and size of the awaruite being generated. But there's so many kind of intricacies that can change locally within the broader area that's being developed, that it's really hard to say. But in general, when we're getting into a zone, because of the scale of it, those zones tend to be quite big. So you can, it's always been told to me about this type of deposit that you can hone into a mineralized zone by using the mineralization, as opposed to like a typical copper or gold deposit. You're looking for other minerals that are in the system to point you towards where the gold or copper is. For a awaruite, you're looking at the awaruite. The awaruite is helping guide you to where there's more awaruite and there's better awaruite. So it is kind of a unique system in that way.
Very, very, very interesting. So would you say that area around hole 10 will likely be an area of focus in the future to try to build some higher grade tonnage that's closer to surface?
Absolutely, yeah. No, when we see the grades like that and those types of areas, we don't want to get what I like to say, we don't want to get stuck in a phone booth and start drilling too many holes within a region, because then you're not really helping grow the project as a whole. But you do want to have enough information in that area so that it can improve the economics of the project. And that's why you would see areas like around hole 10 be targeted to kind of use for the initial economics of a project like this, because they're going to help you get through those first couple years of your initial payback on your operation.
So the results from holes 11, 12, and 14 will also give us a lot of data to chew on to see if that higher grade, closer to surface zone extends to the east and to the south.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of past, the initial kind of is it there phase, and now we're like, where's the best mineralization phase within this larger area? So there's still questions to answer. There's still drilling to be done. We haven't fully exceeded beyond the area of mineralization. So we want to, we want to close off what could be, large scale pit, and we want to see if we can find secondary zones that could be secondary pits in an operation. You are, limited to the size of an individual operation. There's a certain size that makes sense when you're moving trucks and moving dirt, that is a kind of a threshold that you don't really want to exceed. But doubling that and having two separate ones, that can be done. So that's what we're looking at, trying to find a secondary zone further away from the RPM zone, but close enough that they could share infrastructure. And that's what we believe. There's other projects along this trend that fit that bill. And as much as we're going to continue focusing on the RPM zone, we want to see if we can make this thing even better.
Very good. And then hole 13 is a big step out to the north. Is that just testing further just to see, what's up there? Or is there a particular reason why you stepped out so far to the north?
Well, that's part of our regular grid pattern. So what we've been doing is we've been doing 400-meter lines and drilling 200 meters along those lines. So that's giving us, a very broad footprint, or a very broad way of testing what the footprint is. And so far we've seen mineralization across this 1.4 kilometer strike, drill hole to drill hole. And there's obviously mineralization north of that drill hole, and there's mineralization south of the further south drill hole. So it at some point, when we're talking to our partner, we're looking at how much do you need, and not getting too hungry to get more. So at some point, this is going to look at how do we build this into a viable resource versus, we have 10 billion tons of material, because you'll never be able to, feasibly mine that in your lifetime. It's just too much material. So, what we want to do is we want to say, okay, well, we know it's this big based on this widely spaced drilling, while not over committing to drilling in certain areas that are widely spaced. And then if we are seeing something that we think is worth more in one area versus another, then we can focus our drilling to define a more, I guess, higher level resource within those areas. So it's still within our grid, but it is it is expanding this footprint to what, I won't give out exact numbers, but that's kind of what we're targeting, is to get to the 1 billion ton kind of volume. And then within that, putting economics together for, the first 5 to 10 years that are going to be better. And then the longer 20-year kind of projection. And then on top of that, having a secondary pit would also be quite significant as well.
You were busy the last couple of months attending some conferences in the US. I think you were in Nashville and maybe Los Angeles. What were the sort of the conversations that you had at those conferences? And when you tell people smelter-free nickel, zero sulfur content, do they, look at you crazy, or do people get it?
It's, it's one of these things that it's a rare deposit, and it's not widely understood even by people in the industry. So it is a huge kind of gap in understanding, and it takes a lot of effort on our part to try and bridge that gap, to try and explain to people what we have and why it's significant. So, that's the type of conversations that we're having with these bigger players. We were at a stainless steel conference and a battery metals conference. The stainless steel conference is obviously very good for downstream players in the industry because they're, it's still the lion's share of where the nickel goes. They're still consuming the majority of the nickel in the market. But the batteries are growing significantly, and we're seeing a lot of new factories pop up over North America and Europe that are also driving the demand for nickel. And all these players are companies and groups that we want to deal with and that can help us in the future. And starting those conversations and seeing where they're going is important, and also explaining to them what we have and why it's unique is extremely important. One of the key things that we're wanting people to understand is, we don't need to smelt our material. We don't need to process it in any kind of secondary roasting or high pressure acid leaching process. We can use magnets once we crush the material to concentrate it, and we can take that concentrate and we can just use a very simple flotation, which is not like an aggressive energy consuming process, and that takes it right at the mine site in basically 2 steps to a 60% nickel concentrate, which is double the grade of nickel sulfate final product. So all these other products are trying to get to a couple percent nickel, then they need to be smelted, and then they need to be converted into a 20-30% product, and then they're shipped, and then they're processed. So for us, we can get straight to a 60% concentrate and ship much less volume, and it can still be taken to all of the different types of product that these refineries are looking for in a much more direct, much more environmentally friendly and efficient way. And that can be done without shipping the material off of the North America, or it could be done shipping to our friendly allies in Europe. And all of these are the important larger scale pictures that we need to start looking at, because we've gone beyond just do we have something? We know we have something. Now what are we going to do with it? And it takes a little bit of larger thinking for the next few steps here.
Yeah, and something that I always like, especially with an earlier stage company like FAN, is try to think about the economics. Just try to come up with some potential economic outcomes, how the numbers might look. And the cool thing is that while you can't publish economics yet, you still have to put together a resource, and you have to kind of be careful what you talk about in terms of financials at the corporate level. But there's another company in the sector, which is FPX, that has already done economic studies and publicized it. So that's a very direct comp for First Atlantic, that investors can look at their economic studies, see the numbers, see the assumptions that they have, and look at the NPV they came up with. And I think based upon the drilling to date, you match up very well with FPX.
Absolutely. It's in my opinion, it's a direct comparable as far as the geology goes, the mineralization. It's on the opposite side of the continent. We're much happier over in Newfoundland with a very supportive government that we've been dealing with. It's been a huge pleasure to be able to have an evolving exploration plan and go to the Ministry of Mining in the province and put permits in, submit permits, and get them back within weeks. It's been very critical to our plans, or to achieving our plans, allowing us to adapt on the fly. So yeah, Newfoundland is an amazing location. We're close to hydroelectric power. We've built, one of the things that we have done this year is we've built infrastructure as far as road access and bridges into the project area. So, 30 kilometers is a huge area. We did have initial road access onto the project, but then once you're on the project, you have a 30-kilometer long belt. And part of the initial challenge was to figure out where do we go in this 30 kilometers. And we poked around kind of in different areas and found varying amounts of mineralization that we actually want to follow up with again, because we've learned a lot about the orientation and which way, we should be drilling. But once we've honed in on that, the RPM zone, this is not a small scale zone. This is a significant area. Once we figured that out, then we built the road access in. So that's, that was a huge milestone for us to build a semi-permanent camp and have access in on road year round that is now paying dividends, because we're able to continue operating with very little additional cost.
Yeah, so that's a really important point. I mean, even though the project is in a pretty snowy place, the road access means that you can drill that year round without a problem.
Yeah, that's huge, right? To have the ground access and ground-based drilling allows you to increase your efficiencies, and as we move forward and grow, it actually becomes more efficient. So that's initial high cost when we started, but that decreases over time, and it does really pay off in the end.
Let's talk about the share price and the valuation. It seems to me, I'm interested in your thoughts, that you might have received some tax loss selling here in FAN in the last month or so. Just, maybe some people bought it at 25 or 30 cents and they figure nothing major is going to change in the next few months. So let me book the loss and I'll take a look at it again in Q1 2026. What are your thoughts on that? And, the market valuation seems pretty removed from the potential here. So what are your thoughts on that and how to get investors to appreciate, the potential more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough market right now with the prices of nickel. But, I tell people that this is not a nickel mining operation. We're not dependent on the price of nickel today. Nickel will go up in the future. There's no question that nickel is a primary commodity that is needed for the energy transition, and even to sustain the current supply and demand. There's just such a critical mineral in developing these new technologies and to sustain our way of life that there's no real risk, in my opinion, that nickel is going to go up in the future. So you have to look at what we're building. We're building a valuable deposit that is going to be mined in the future when the prices are higher. But we can't overly get focused on, just because the nickel price is low now, then the stock price should be low now. There's a huge opportunity to be part of something that's going from, essentially zero value in the ground. Now we've drilled it, now we're discovering it, now we're building it, and we're going to put, like this things have, there's tens of billions of dollars of value that you can build. And, you do have to have a little bit of a longer term outlook to see that. But I mean, that is, a massive appreciation. As far as the share price, we've had this conversation, I think, in the past. We've had warrants outstanding for a few years that are 20-cent warrants, and every, it's a huge block of warrants that's, there's chatter out there. This is an overhang. It's a little bit of a mental issue. Those are all coming off. Those are all expiring. So we're essentially going to be warrant free in under a month here, or just over a month, sorry. And that's going to be, I think, a very critical turning point for the share price. That's going to bring off a lot of the overhead pressure. And that's kind of our game plan, our mentality, is to try and stay away from getting to that situation again, where we have basically a free ride warrant that's, restricting the appreciation of the stock.
Very good. I know some shareholders are going to be very happy to hear that, and very happy once all those warrants are gone in January. So it's a good setup. It's a good setup in FAN, heading into 2026. I think there's a lot of catalysts here. Last two topics, and then I'll let you go, Adrian. So the acquisition of these projects, the skeptic might say, oh, they're acquiring a new project. That must mean they're changing their focus. The optimist might say, maybe you got a good deal on this and this just adds more upside. So tell us about the new projects.
Yeah, these are similar rocks in the area. This is Newfoundland. We love the jurisdiction. We think Newfoundland is the place that we want to be. And these are large scale ophiolite packages that have ultramafic rocks in them. So they have the potential for awaruite. They have the potential for all the minerals associated with that, and they also have potential for platinum group and rare earth elements. So there's a lot going on there. It is, not our main focus. This is an opportunity to have a secondary project that we could also, identify and build some value in while we're still working on the Pipestone. On top of that, what we've been finding is there's, this property specifically, just to mention that this has a significant amount of research done on it, not just on that type of rock, but actually physically on that property itself. There's been a lot of research and a lot of money spent and a lot of funding from different groups looking at all the different components and long-term values that that those rocks can bring. And by getting in early, we're kind of just securing potential upside that may or may not come, but it's an opportunity where we can help it along, and we can look into it and follow up on some of this research, and even what we're looking at is doing the research partnerships on that material as well. And this is a growing space. It's not going away. There's huge demand for new energy. Hydrogen is an evolving space. Geological hydrogen, it is real. Part of what we wanted to explain to people when we're putting out news like this is, for those skeptics, is like, hey, this isn't us making this up. Look at all these studies. These studies are done on these rocks. There's studies done by the government, by universities, by Stanford, by Harvard. Like, it's not us saying this. We're just trying to let you know, because this information is buried and very difficult to find. We're trying to let you know what's here. And this is why we're excited about it. This is why we think it's an opportunity.
Very interesting. And the consideration paid, you paid totally in shares, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the terms, the summary of the agreements are in the news release. And by the way, First Atlantic Nickel publishes some of the best news releases in the entire junior mining sector. Extremely thorough, extremely detailed, good presentation of the information. And it seems like you guys really go out of your way to put it all out there for investors to see and understand. Final question, Adrian, set us up for 2026. What are your goals and key milestones that you expect the company to achieve in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to kick it off right away. We're going to start expanding our drilling program throughout the beginning of the year, through the winter, and January, February is going to be an extra push. And that's going to lead off with the warrant expiry. So these two things kind of in tandem could be a real nice setup for our stock, and to help us grow, right? Because that growth is going to allow us to do better deals and bigger deals. And that's what I'm really kind of anticipating and focusing on, is getting a really kind of significant deal done on this, because we've shown that it's here now. Now we're at the stage, okay, who are we going to play with in our sandbox that we've built here? And I think there's a couple interesting players, and I think there's a lot that could happen in the next 12 months.
I gotta ask a little follow there. Deal done, is that like a partnership agreement, or just selling project outright?
I mean, I believe that we have a lot of value to add here. Obviously, like our share price is leaving, a lot to be desired. And, so I think that we are able, with our group and our team, to build that value. So we want to do that. We want to continue to expand this project to attain that value. But it's more partnerships at this stage, I would say, prior to moving to a bigger kind of acquisition type stage. But I won't take anything off the table, and I won't say too much.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your time, Adrian. This was a great update, and I look forward to more of these interviews in the new year. Thank you.
Appreciate it.